What if the love of your life told you no one would ever love you again? Just because you're pregnant? What if your worst heartbreak was broadcast to the world? Have you ever felt discarded, like your story was over before it even began? Trust me, it's not. Today, I'll tell you a story not just about betrayal, but about rising from the ashes and rewriting your own ending. Stay with me. This one will break your heart and heal it at the same time. You really think someone's gonna love a woman carrying another man's child? He sneered, voice low but sharp, echoing just enough to turn heads. Layla Monroe's blood ran cold, the orchestra quieted. Clinking glasses stilled midair. Dozens of eyes swiveled toward her, toward the pregnant woman in the shimmering silver gown standing alone in the center of the room. And just like that, the world stopped turning. Tyler Grant, her fiancé, had just announced their breakup in the cruelest way imaginable, in the most public way possible, and in the exact moment they were meant to celebrate their future together. A nationally televised gala, hundreds of high society's finest, cameras, reporters, executives, her entire professional circle, her entire life. The man she loved just humiliated her on live TV. Layla's throat tightened, her vision blurred. She forced herself to stand still, even as her knees trembled under the weight of her growing belly and the cold stare of betrayal. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She had imagined the announcement so differently. She'd pictured standing next to Tyler, hand in hand, smiling as they shared the news of her pregnancy. She'd even picked out a tiny glittering silver baby shoe as a surprise to reveal during his speech. It was still in her purse. She never got to give it to him. Instead, Tyler had taken the stage, smiled into the cameras, toasted to a clean slate, and said, with a casual shrug, "No man in his right mind wants to raise someone else's burden." Then he looked straight at her stomach. That's when the murmurs started. The whispers, the laughter. One woman in the back actually giggled. Layla's heart shattered. Her hand flew protectively over her stomach as if to shield her unborn baby from the words, the stares, the rejection. She wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear, but she couldn't move, because someone else was moving. Through the shocked crowd, a figure cut through like a blade of silence. Tall, dark, commanding, dressed in a midnight black tuxedo, with a presence so magnetic that the entire ballroom instinctively parted to let him through. Elias Storm, CEO of Storm Tech, billionaire, media tycoon, a man known for swallowing entire industries in hostile takeovers. He didn't just walk into a room, he shifted its gravity. And right now, his focus was on her. "Miss Monroe?" he said, stopping in front of her. His voice was calm, controlled, dangerous in the way only powerful men could be. Layla blinked, confused, dizzy. Elias turned, not to her but to the cameras. "To clarify," he said, his voice booming now, "Tyler Grant is absolutely right." Gasps exploded across the ballroom. Layla flinched. "No man," Elias continued, "should love a woman like this." The pain hit her chest like a wrecking ball. The betrayal, the humiliation, it was happening again, until he took her hand. "But I do," he said, "and I always have." Silence, and then chaos. Reporters dropped their wine glasses. Flashbulbs burst into action. Journalists scrambled. Executives whispered. Socialites gawked. One woman even fainted. Elias Storm, the billionaire known for destroying rivals with a smile, just declared love for a pregnant woman he wasn't even supposed to be dating, on national television, in front of her ex-fiancé. He pulled Layla gently to his side, his palm firm against the small of her back. "You're not leaving alone," he whispered. Layla couldn't breathe. She looked up into his eyes, steel gray, focused, familiar. Wait, familiar? Before she could make sense of it, Tyler staggered forward. "What the hell is this?" he barked, his perfect hair disheveled, ego visibly deflating. Elias didn't even look at him. "She deserves better," Elias said, turning with Layla toward the ballroom exit. "And you just made the biggest mistake of your life." They walked out under a blinding storm of camera flashes. Layla Monroe wasn't supposed to be part of this world. She was just a girl from Oregon. A quiet life. A passion for art. She worked her way up as a gallery curator, carefully building her reputation. She'd never chased fame. Never played games. She just wanted to create spaces where art could breathe. Where stories could be seen. Tyler had seemed perfect, smart, ambitious, charming. He swept her off her feet with flowers, rooftop dinners, promises. He said he wanted to build a life together. But when she told him she was pregnant, he changed. He accused her of trying to trap him. He stopped coming home. He took calls in the hallway, started hiding his phone. When she cried, he rolled his eyes. Still, she stayed. She wanted to believe in the man he used to be. Until tonight. Until he broke her. And yet, just as her world was collapsing, Elias Storm had stepped in, a man she barely knew, or did she? Layla frowned, remembering something. A client. Months ago, a mysterious buyer who'd requested a private tour of the Monet exhibit. She'd guided him for 2 hours, laughing softly as he mispronounced Impression Soleil Levant. He said his name was Ellie. He'd worn glasses. He left her a thank you note. Simple, handwritten. You help people see beauty. That's a gift. She never forgot it. And now here he was, taking her hand in front of the world, standing between her and the shame Tyler tried to brand her with. She didn't know why, but she was about to find out, because the cameras were still rolling. And Elias Storm had just invited her into a storm bigger than anything she'd ever known. 3 days before the gala, Layla Monroe stood in her apartment staring at the ultrasound photo pinned to her refrigerator. A pair of tiny feet, still forming, still growing, had somehow become the entire axis of her world. She smiled faintly, then touched her belly. "I'll protect you," she whispered. She meant it, because no one had protected her. Not her mother, who vanished when Layla was 7. Not her foster families, who saw her as cheap labor or tax breaks. And certainly not the men in her life. Charming, confident, cruel. She had survived them all. Layla learned early on that being quiet was safer. That people underestimated soft voices, gentle hands, calm expressions. That if she just smiled and nodded, they'd show her who they really were. And she'd learn how to navigate around their storms. She didn't scream when a foster father called her useless. She didn't fight back when her college boyfriend criticized her weight. She didn't even cry when Tyler Grant first raised his voice. She just filed it away. Like a curator, she cataloged every cruelty. But behind her silence was steel. She put herself through school on scholarships and part-time jobs, reading art history by flashlight and sleeping on friends' couches. She graduated summa cum laude. She built a career on discipline and patience, guiding multi-million-dollar collectors with the same ease she used to guide toddlers through library story hour as a teen volunteer. People listened to her because she never demanded attention. She earned it. Tyler Grant didn't understand that. He saw her as soft, malleable, easy to impress. And for a while, Layla let him believe it. Their relationship had started with bright beginnings. Tyler was a rising tech star, the kind of man who always had an idea to pitch and a suit pressed to perfection. He told her she was refreshing, not like the girls in his world who chased IPOs and influencer deals. He said he loved how she didn't care about money. At first it felt romantic. She cooked homemade dinners. He brought her flowers. He asked about her childhood, and she lied, said she was just a shy girl from a nice, quiet family. She couldn't bear to tell him the truth, that she didn't have one, that she built herself from broken pieces. When he proposed, it was fast. A rooftop dinner, a glittering ring, champagne. She said yes. Not because she believed in fairy tales, but because, for the first time, someone had said she was enough. Until the pregnancy. Tyler wasn't cruel right away. At first, he faked excitement. Kissed her forehead. Said things like, "We've got this, and we'll build a nursery with voice-activated lights." But within weeks, he started slipping. He stopped coming to appointments, stopped asking how she felt, started referring to the baby as that situation. The final crack came one afternoon when she found him pacing the kitchen, muttering into his phone. "I told you she's keeping it. What do you want me to do? Drag her to a clinic? It's not that simple anymore. She's showing." Layla stood silently in the hallway. Her heart didn't break. It hardened. She didn't confront him that day. She simply began preparing. Quietly, carefully. She withdrew money from their shared savings. She updated her will. She reviewed her contract at the gallery, where thankfully her boss was a woman who understood discretion and dignity. But she never expected what happened at the gala. After Elias Storm led her away from the chaos, they didn't speak for a full minute. They moved through the marble hallway of the Grand Meridian like ghosts slipping through dimensions. Then finally Layla stopped. "Why did you do that?" she asked. Her voice didn't shake. She needed truth, not comfort. Elias turned, adjusting the cuff of his tux jacket. His gray eyes were unreadable. Because it needed to be done, he replied simply. That doesn't answer the question. He paused. Then, with a slight wry smile, said, You don't remember me, do you? Layla frowned. I do, he said. Not well. But I remember you showing me a sculpture called Woman Holding Sky. You said it was about invisible weight. Layla blinked. You were the man in the navy coat from the off-hours tour. Elias nodded. You asked no questions. You just listened, she said. And you showed me something rare, he replied. A woman strong enough not to explain herself. She looked away. I didn't mean for you to get involved. You didn't. I chose. He said it with finality, like a signature on a contract. That night, Elias sent her home in a town car, flanked by 2 private security guards. He had someone pick up her things from the gallery and arranged a doctor's appointment with a specialist. Layla hadn't agreed to any of it. She hadn't even known how to respond. But it wasn't charity. Because the next morning, Elias Storm called a press conference and announced that Layla Monroe was the new Director of Community Impact for Storm Foundation, overseeing a $25 million initiative to bring art therapy to underserved schools. Effective immediately. Layla stared at the TV screen. This wasn't a rescue. It was a power move. He wasn't hiding her. He was elevating her. Tyler, meanwhile, went viral, for all the wrong reasons. Memes, articles, hashtags, No Man Would Love trended for 2 straight days. His company lost investors, sponsors pulled out, PR teams scrambled. Layla didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She just watched the tide turn. And for the first time in months, she felt free. Because maybe the world finally saw what she always knew. She wasn't weak, she was just waiting. And now she was ready to rise. Layla Monroe stood at the entrance of the Stormtech headquarters, the glass skyscraper stretching so high it seemed to cut the clouds. The city buzzed around her, taxis honking, phones ringing, lives moving. But inside her, everything had gone eerily quiet. She adjusted the navy blazer Elias had sent, tailored perfectly, sleek, nothing like the soft sweaters she used to wear. Her reflection in the glass doors stared back at her, pregnant, composed, unrecognizable. Miss Monroe, the receptionist greeted her with a polite nod as she stepped in. Mr. Storm is waiting for you upstairs? Layla nodded. She barely had to say a word. The name Storm opened every door. The elevator ride to the 71st floor felt eternal. Her heart pounded not out of fear, but anticipation. She had spent her entire life as the girl in the background, the girl who made other people's dreams look good. Now she was being thrust into the spotlight by a man she barely knew. The doors opened to a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline and a workspace that looked more like a modern art museum than an office. Polished concrete floors, floating stairs, bookshelves holding everything from finance manuals to poetry anthologies. And Elias Storm, standing by the window, sleeves rolled up, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, as if billion-dollar decisions were just casual conversations to him. Glad you came, he said, without turning. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, Layla admitted. He faced her, no smile, no pretense, just focus. This isn't pity, he said. I don't do pity. Layla folded her arms. Then what is it? Strategy, he replied. You've been underestimated your whole life. I have no interest in repeating that mistake. She exhaled slowly. So you want to use me? I want to empower you. There's a difference. Layla tilted her head, considering. She had every reason to walk away, every instinct to protect herself. But something about Elias felt different. Not gentle, not warm, but fair. He didn't look at her like a burden. He looked at her like a weapon. And maybe, for once, she wanted to be one. Within a week, Layla was immersed in a new world. Foundation meetings, development pitches, team briefings. She wasn't just a figurehead. Elias made sure of it. She was at the table, leading discussions, setting timelines. And she was good. Better than good. Layla had spent years reading between the lines, adapting to people, anticipating needs. Now she turned those quiet instincts into strategic leadership. She spoke with clarity. She listened more than she talked. And when she did speak, people paid attention. Still not everyone welcomed her. There were whispers in the boardroom. She's only here because of Storm. She's pregnant and unqualified. PR stunt. Layla heard it all. The smirks, the subtle snubs. One executive even called her Storm's charity case behind her back. Big mistake. Elias called a meeting. Not privately, not quietly, publicly, in front of the entire executive team. "She's not a placeholder," he said. "She's not a victim. She's the future of this foundation. If anyone has a problem with that, you're free to resign." Silence. No one resigned. After that, no one questioned her again. But success came at a cost. The more Layla climbed, the more she saw just how far she'd fallen from her old life. Her old apartment sat empty now, untouched. The photos on her nightstand, Tyler kissing her forehead, her college graduation, her cat, they stayed boxed away in a storage unit. Sometimes at night, the silence was suffocating. Her baby kicked more frequently now, as if sensing her unrest. The doctors called it a strong response, but Layla called it something else. Hope. She began writing letters to her unborn child, pages of fears, wishes, warnings. She didn't know if she'd ever share them. But somehow, putting her heart into ink helped her navigate the storm around her. And then came the press request. A major national network wanted to feature her as part of a series on women in leadership. Layla considered declining. She had no desire to be a media puppet. But Elias sat across from her and said, "You don't have to tell your whole story, just enough to remind them that power and pain can exist in the same person." She agreed. The interview was filmed on a rooftop garden overlooking the skyline. Layla wore a cream-colored blazer, soft waves in her hair, minimal makeup. She looked every bit the poised executive, except for the bump showing proudly beneath her blouse. "I was told no man would love a woman like me," she said calmly into the camera. "But I stopped needing anyone's permission to be loved. I started loving myself first." The clip went viral overnight. Women flooded her inbox with stories of betrayal, of strength, of rebirth. Teen girls wrote letters thanking her for showing pregnancy didn't make them invisible. CEOs reposted her words with pride. Even celebrities shared it, calling her a silent storm. Layla cried in the shower that night, not from sadness, from release. For the first time, her story wasn't just pain, it was purpose. Tyler tried to reach out. Of course he did. He sent a bouquet of peonies with a note. "You look powerful. I miss us." Layla laughed for a full minute. Then she tossed the flowers in the trash. She had no room for ghosts, not anymore. But the biggest shock came one evening when Elias invited her to a private event, a gala hosted at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. "No cameras," he promised, "just art." Layla hesitated. "Why?" "You need to see where you belong." She arrived wearing an emerald gown that fit like armor. Heads turned, not in scandal, but in awe. She wasn't the broken girl Tyler left behind. She wasn't the assistant curating someone else's vision. She was a woman with a presence, a woman with power. Elias stood beside her all night, not touching, not performing, just existing in quiet alliance. They didn't need to say much. The entire room felt the shift. She belonged, and for once, she knew it too. Tyler Grant watched the video again, jaw clenched so tightly his teeth ached. Layla, on national television. Pregnant, poised, powerful. The words replayed in his head like a taunt. "I stopped needing anyone's permission to be loved." His hands trembled as he slammed his laptop shut. He'd lost control of the narrative. The woman he humiliated had risen higher than he ever imagined. Not just headlines, not just praise. She had Elias storm. And that fact, more than anything, made his blood boil. Because Elias wasn't just a billionaire. He was a rival. Back in Silicon Valley, when Tyler first launched his software firm, Elias's venture group passed on funding him. Not once, but 3 times. Tyler always suspected it was personal, though he could never prove it. Now, Elias had swept in, taken his ex-fiancée, and made her the face of Storm Foundation's expansion. Every investor that once begged to partner with Tyler was now requesting meetings with StormTech. The damage wasn't just emotional, it was financial. And Tyler hated losing more than he hated anything else. He needed to remind the world who Layla really was. Not this glowing, courageous phoenix, but the girl he remembered, insecure, too forgiving, desperate to be loved. The girl who couldn't even confront him when he cheated, who just stood there, watching him walk out the door with someone else. Tyler reached for his phone and called Lena Vaughn, a celebrity publicist who specialized in reputation redirection. "You want to run a piece?" she asked, skeptical. "I want to remind people that she's not who she's pretending to be. She's the pregnant golden girl of the hour, Tyler. If you go after her, it better be subtle. Otherwise, it backfires. Hard." "I don't need subtle," he said darkly. "I need effective." 2 days later, gossip blogs exploded. Layla Monroe, Is her past as clean as her image? A series of photos accompanied the headline. One of Layla in her early 20s, holding hands with a man who looked significantly older. Another of her entering a low-income housing complex. Then one from college, Layla crying in a dorm hallway while a roommate comforted her. The article painted a picture of a woman with a troubled history, suggesting that her childhood had been marked by instability, that her academic scholarships came with special conditions, and that her past might not align with the polished image the Storm Foundation now markets. No direct lies, just enough implication to stir the pot. Elias's assistant brought the article to his desk, but he was already reading it. His jaw didn't tighten. His hands didn't tremble. He simply picked up his phone and dialed Layla. She answered immediately. "I've seen it." He paused. "You okay?" "I expected this," she said. "Just not so soon. We can shut it down." "No," she said, surprising him. "Let them talk." "You sure?" "I'm not ashamed of where I came from," she said, steady. "And if Tyler thinks a few old photos are going to unravel me, he clearly still doesn't know who I am." The next day, Layla requested to speak at the Storm Foundation's monthly press briefing. Elias raised an eyebrow. "You're not obligated." "I'm ready," she said. She stepped onto the stage in a tailored black dress, her bump obvious, her presence undeniable. The press waited eagerly, cameras aimed, pens ready. "I've seen the articles," she began, voice calm but resonant. "And yes, I've lived in public housing. I've cried in dorm rooms. I've been broke, scared, and underestimated." Murmurs rippled through the room. "I've also earned every scholarship I was given. I've worked every job with integrity, and I've never apologized for surviving." She paused. "I'm not here because I'm perfect. I'm here because I understand struggle. And I believe those are the best people to lead, not the ones born on pedestals, but the ones who learned how to climb." Cameras flashed. Reporters nodded. Layla walked off stage to a standing ovation. That night, Tyler sat in his penthouse, watching the clip. He threw his glass against the wall. The blowback was immediate. The article had the opposite effect. It made Layla more relatable. Her Instagram following doubled. Talk shows invited her to speak about resilience. The foundation's donations surged, and his own reputation sinking. Shareholders questioned his leadership. Partners went silent. One even leaked an email he'd written, calling Layla a brand that needs deflating. He was losing, and he hated it. But he had one last card to play. The gala invitation came in a matte black envelope. Winter Visionaries, an evening with Storm Foundation and global tech leaders. Tyler received one. Everyone who mattered did. Layla almost didn't attend. "It's too soon," she said to Elias. "I don't need to walk into another ballroom just to be watched again." "You won't be watched," Elias said. "You'll be seen, on your terms." She stared at her reflection, her hand resting over her stomach, and nodded. The night of the gala, Layla arrived in a deep crimson gown with structured shoulders and a high slit. Her makeup was bold, her walk confident. Elias walked beside her in a sleek black tux, hand gently resting at the small of her back. The crowd hushed as they entered. Photographers clicked madly. Whispers surged through the room. They weren't hiding, they were arriving. Tyler watched from across the ballroom, a drink in hand, his new date clinging to his side. He hadn't expected her to look like this, like she owned the air around her. He walked over. Elias saw him coming. Layla stepped forward before anyone could speak. "Tyler?" she said smoothly. "Still chasing relevance?" His jaw ticked. "You're not the person I remember." "No," she said, "I'm not, and thank God for that." The crowd watched. No one interrupted. "Tell me," she added, voice calm, "how does it feel watching someone you tried to break become someone you can't reach anymore?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. She turned, gently placing her hand on Elias's arm. "Let's go." And just like that, she left Tyler in the past, where he belonged. Layla Monroe didn't cry that night. Not after the gala. Not after humiliating Tyler Grant in front of Manhattan's most powerful. Not even after walking out hand in hand with Elias Storm to a wave of cheers and flashing cameras. She didn't cry. She smiled. But 3 nights later, as she sat alone on the edge of her bed, swollen feet resting on a pillow, hand cradling her belly, the smile faded. Not because she regretted anything. Not because she doubted herself. But because silence had returned. That deep, empty kind that even success couldn't drown out. The world called her brave, empowered, a symbol of modern womanhood. But inside, she still felt alone. Not because she missed Tyler. God, no. She missed the idea of partnership, of not being the only one carrying the weight. The baby kicked softly, a reminder, a heartbeat that kept her steady. She whispered, "I'm still here. We're still here." And then, for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to cry. Quiet tears, exhausted ones, not from pain, but from pressure. The next morning, Layla walked into Stormtech's 71st floor conference room, wearing a soft beige maternity suit, minimal makeup, and a look that said she hadn't slept, but was still running the show. Elias was waiting, arms folded, 2 coffees in hand. "Caramel oat milk," he said, holding one out. "Extra shot." Layla accepted it with a nod. "Thanks." "You okay?" "I'm functioning." "That's not an answer," she sighed, sitting. "I just haven't paused since the first interview went viral. Every hour is another meeting, another event, another appearance. I'm trying to be everything at once." "You're not," Elias said gently. "You're one woman, not a machine." Layla stared into her coffee. "You ever feel like your life took off before you could fasten your seatbelt?" Elias didn't answer immediately. Then, softly, "Every day since I was 16. Layla looked up. "My father left. I had a mother who was half absent and half resentful. I learned to make people listen because silence didn't protect me." For a moment, they weren't CEO and executive. They were just 2 people who built walls to keep from falling apart. But the peace didn't last. 2 days later, Layla received a call from the hospital. She was due for a standard prenatal scan, routine, nothing unusual. But when she walked in, the receptionist gave her a hesitant smile. The nurse avoided her eyes. "Is something wrong?" Layla asked. Dr. Kessler, her OB/GYN, appeared at the doorway. "We need to talk." She was led into a private exam room. Her heart pounded. "Your medical file was accessed this week," Dr. Kessler said, lips tight. "Illegally." Layla blinked. "What?" "Someone posing as your assistant requested a copy of your ultrasound images and lab work. Said it was for a media feature. We caught it too late. The file was already emailed." Layla felt like she'd been punched. "Do you know who?" she asked. Dr. Kessler hesitated. "The email used was linked to a known affiliate of a gossip site, one that ran a story about your background last month. Tyler, he had gone too far. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was her baby, her privacy, her body, her child." Later that night, Elias arrived at her apartment without warning. He didn't knock. Her security had already let him in. She sat at the kitchen island, staring at a printed copy of the leaked medical file. "He crossed a line," Elias said, glancing at the page. Layla didn't speak. "I'll take care of it." She finally looked up. "No." "No? This one's mine." Her voice was calm, dangerous. "I was willing to let him embarrass me. I was willing to let him try to twist my past. But this is different." Elias studied her. "What are you planning?" Layla smiled, a cold, clear thing. "Redemption isn't always enough. Sometimes people need consequences." The next day, Layla called a press conference. The reporters assumed it was another foundation update, another photo op. Instead, she walked onto the stage holding a folder. "Today," she began, "I'm not speaking as a professional. I'm speaking as a mother." The room stilled. "I recently discovered that my private medical records were accessed and leaked to tabloids. Records that included details about my pregnancy, my health, and my unborn child." Gasps, camera clicks. This wasn't journalism. This was a crime. She paused. "And I know who did it." Layla opened the folder and held up a printed email, redacted for legal reasons, but clearly addressed to a known tabloid outlet. The signature? An alias tied directly to Tyler Grant's media consultant. "I've filed a criminal complaint," Layla said, "and a civil suit." The room erupted. Later that night, every major network aired the clip. Social media exploded. Celebrities rallied around her. Politicians tweeted statements of support. Women's rights groups praised her. Tyler? He went dark. His company's board held an emergency meeting. Sponsors pulled out. Lawyers reached out for settlement. But Layla wasn't interested in money. She wanted accountability, and she was just getting started. The following week, Layla sat in the courtroom, not for a trial, but for a hearing to review her protective motion. Tyler showed up looking smaller than he had at the gala. He didn't look smug. He looked finished. When the judge asked if Layla had anything to say, she stood slowly. "I'm not here for revenge," she said. "I'm here because silence enables harm. What you did wasn't just illegal, it was inhumane." She looked him dead in the eye. I'm not afraid of you anymore. The judge granted the motion, full restraining order, permanent medical privacy protections. As she left the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Layla didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. Layla Monroe had never felt this kind of exhaustion. Not in college when she worked 3 jobs to cover tuition. Not when Tyler first walked out and she had to rebuild her life from ashes. Not even during the press tour, when interviews blurred into appearances and cameras seemed stitched into every corner of her existence. This was different. This was her body saying, enough. It started as a headache, dull but persistent. Then the nausea returned, stronger than usual. She chalked it up to stress, brushed it off. But when her vision blurred during a board meeting, she knew it was more than fatigue. "Layla, are you all right?" Elias asked, concerned, as she rubbed her temples trying to stay grounded. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just need water." But she never made it to the bottle. The room tilted, her knees buckled, and then everything went black. She woke up to beeping, a hospital ceiling, sterile light, and Elias Storm pacing in the corner, tie loosened, fury and fear flickering across his face. "You fainted," he said before she even asked. "The driver brought you here." Layla tried to sit up, but the tubes in her arm made it awkward. "Is the baby?" "She's okay," Elias said, his voice steady. "Doctor said she's strong." She closed her eyes in relief. "She?" He nodded. "You're having a daughter." Something in Layla cracked wide open. Not fear, not sadness, just love. Terrifying, fierce, unconditional love. "She's okay," she whispered again, like a prayer. "Okay." But the next words hit harder. "Your blood pressure's too high," Elias continued. "They're calling it gestational hypertension, and your iron levels are low." "I've been busy," Layla muttered. "You've been burning the candle at both ends," he corrected. "No one's asking you to be superhuman." Layla stared at him, frustration rising. "Yes, they are. The media, the foundation, everyone expects me to be flawless." "No," Elias said. "They expect you to be real. You're allowed to rest, Layla." She turned away. "Resting means letting the world spin without me." "Maybe," Elias said. "Or maybe it means you finally trust that it won't fall apart if you take care of yourself." The next few days were a forced slowdown. No meetings, no media. Just Layla, her bump, and the unfamiliar feeling of stillness. Her assistant brought her laptop once, and Elias sent her books, not business manuals, poetry, fiction, even a cookbook. "Distraction is sometimes survival," his note read. It helped until the phone call. "Layla," her gallery director Harper said over the line, "someone broke into our downtown location last night." "What?" "No major damage, but they smashed the sculpture from the Women's Resilience exhibit, the one you donated." Layla's blood chilled. "Security footage?" "The cameras caught a man in a hoodie, but before we could identify him, someone wiped the drive." Layla didn't have proof, but her gut already knew. Tyler. Even if he didn't do it himself, someone did it for him. The message was clear. She wasn't untouchable. Even her art wasn't safe. Elias arrived within the hour. "I want new security," she said immediately. "For my apartment, for the gallery, for my OB visits." "Done. And I want the story out, not gossip. Controlled, strategic." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "Are you sure?" She looked him dead in the eye. "I'm done reacting. I want to lead this war." The news broke that evening. A major art piece destroyed in an act of suspected retaliation. Layla issued a statement, not through PR, but live, standing in front of the gallery's cracked window. "This wasn't just vandalism," she said. "It was intimidation, and I will not be silenced. Women carry the weight of the world every day, and we do it while pregnant, while healing, while rising." She paused. "Break the art, not the spirit. I'm not going anywhere." The footage went viral, again, but this time it was different. She wasn't the victim, she was the warrior. That night, Elias cooked dinner at her place. Salmon, quinoa, steamed greens. Layla stared at the plate like it was a foreign artifact. "You cook?" He smirked. "I own 26 companies. One of them is a culinary brand." She smiled, then paused. "Why do you do all this?" "All what?" "The security, the support, the cooking." Elias set down his fork. "I don't want anything from you," he said plainly. "You don't owe me a relationship or loyalty or a smile." "Then why?" "Because I know what it's like to go through hell alone." Layla was quiet. Then softly, "So do I." They didn't say much after that. They didn't need to. But fate, as always, wasn't done testing her. 2 weeks later, at 31 weeks pregnant, Layla began experiencing sharp abdominal pain. She rushed to the hospital. Signs of preeclampsia, the doctor said. You need to rest. Strict bed rest. No travel. No stress. Layla looked at the ceiling. Right, because that's realistic. You're not listening, the doctor warned. We're talking about seizures, stroke, early labor. You need to slow down, or you're risking both your lives. Layla closed her eyes. She thought about the gala, the lawsuit, the smashed sculpture. Then she thought about her daughter. And finally, she nodded. I'll rest. The world didn't stop for her, but it paused. Meetings were moved online, events canceled. And while she hated the stillness, she also began to notice things she hadn't before. The way her baby kicked when she played music. The softness of morning light through her bedroom window. The sound of Elias's voice reading to her at night, because yes, he'd started doing that too. And once, after a long silence, he asked, "What would you name her?" Layla smiled. "Grace," she said. "Why?" "Because I want her to grow up knowing that even in pain, there's beauty." He nodded. "Grace Storm." Layla laughed. "I didn't say she'd carry your last name." Elias looked at her. "But maybe she will." Rain tapped softly against the windows of the penthouse. Layla lay still in bed, her bump gently rising beneath the soft linen sheets, one hand draped protectively across her belly. The doctor's orders had been clear. Complete rest, no work, no stress. But rest wasn't easy when your name was on every major headline and your silence felt louder than any speech. Elias had tried everything to make her stay still. Soothing teas, quiet music, even hiring a yoga instructor who specialized in prenatal breathwork. But tonight was different. Tonight, she couldn't sleep, because something wasn't right. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from her lawyer. "Call me. Urgent." Layla sat up. Elias was in the next room, on a call with investors from Singapore, but the moment he saw her pale face, he ended the conversation. "What happened?" he asked. She showed him the screen. Minutes later, they were seated across from her lawyer in her living room. Rain pattered steadily outside, like a ticking clock she couldn't slow. "I went through the documents you submitted when filing the civil suit against Tyler," the lawyer said, eyes serious. "There's something you need to see." He slid a manila folder across the coffee table. Layla opened it slowly. There, in bold black ink, was a signature, hers. Except, it wasn't. "I never signed this?" Layla said, voice sharp. "No," the lawyer replied, "but Tyler did, in your name." The document was a power of attorney, allegedly giving Tyler rights over Layla's finances. It was backdated, 3 weeks before he kicked her out. "He forged this?" Elias asked, voice dark. The lawyer nodded. "He used it to reroute several assets, including an early inheritance left by your grandfather." Layla stared at the page, heart racing. "What inheritance?" The lawyer blinked. "You didn't know?" Layla shook her head slowly. "Your maternal grandfather, Henry Alcott, was a steel magnate. He passed away 7 years ago. You were named as his sole heir, but the will stipulated the estate would only transfer to you once you turned 30, unless your legal guardian applied for early access." "My guardian? I haven't had one since I was 17. The lawyer looked grim. "The forged power of attorney made Tyler your guardian by default." Layla felt like the ground shifted beneath her. "He stole from me," she whispered. "He took something that was never his." Elias stood up, pacing. "How much are we talking?" The lawyer hesitated. "The original trust was worth $320 million. With appreciation, it's now closer to $450 million. Silence. Even Elias froze. Layla's mouth went dry. "You're saying I'm—" The lawyer nodded. "You're a billionaire, Miss Monroe. Technically, you always were." The next morning, Layla sat in stunned quiet while Elias brewed coffee like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She wasn't just the girl Tyler discarded. She wasn't just the brave, pregnant woman who went viral. She was the heir to a fortune larger than the company Tyler bragged about building. And he had stolen part of it, quietly, methodically, with the kind of arrogance that made him think she'd never find out. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" she asked. "Your grandfather's estate tried," the lawyer had explained. "But Tyler rerouted mail, blocked access, deleted notifications. Legally, it was fraud. Morally, it's despicable." Layla clenched her jaw. She didn't care about the money. Not really. What she cared about was the fact that once again, Tyler had tried to control her narrative, her life, her future, and failed. By noon, the news had leaked. A whistleblower from Tyler's own legal team exposed the forgery. Within hours, headlines erupted. Pregnant CEO-to-be revealed as billion-dollar heiress, ex under criminal investigation. Layla Monroe from betrayed to billionaire. Layla didn't issue a statement. She didn't have to. Her silence had become her power. But Elias, ever the strategist, made one move. He scheduled a televised interview, not just with any network, with Prime America, the most watched evening program in the country. You don't have to say anything personal, he told her. You can walk away from the spotlight right now, and no one would blame you. Layla looked down at her growing belly. No, she said. I think it's time. The interview aired live, coast to coast. Layla wore a deep blue gown, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled into a simple low bun. The camera loved her, not because she sparkled, but because she didn't try to. When the host asked about the inheritance, Layla smiled softly. I didn't grow up with wealth, she said. I grew up with questions about my worth, my future. And for years, I thought success meant surviving. Now I know it means reclaiming. When asked about Tyler, she paused. I'm not here to talk about him, she said. He had his moment. This is mine. Then the host leaned forward. And what about the man sitting backstage? Layla blinked. Elias? The audience chuckled. Is he just your business partner? Layla looked into the camera and said 5 words that sent the internet into a frenzy. He's more than they know. That night, Elias stood with her on the penthouse balcony as the city shimmered below. You didn't have to say that, he said. I wanted to, Layla replied. They were quiet for a while. Then Elias spoke. You're not just surviving anymore. No, she said. I'm building. He looked at her, at the woman who had walked through fire and refused to be ash. And then, without hesitation, he whispered, marry me. Layla turned, stunned. He didn't drop to one knee. He didn't hold out a ring. He just held her gaze. I don't want to save you, Elias said. I just want to stand beside you. Layla blinked, tears brimming. But I know you're not ready. I'm not. Then I'll wait. She smiled, but her next words made him blink. You might not have to. The moment Layla stepped onto the rooftop terrace of the Conrad Grand, the world tilted. Not from nerves, from power. The media called it the Return Gala. The official invitation read, celebrating art, innovation, and resilience, a night with Layla Monroe. But insiders knew exactly what this night was. Her rebirth. Her transformation from forgotten fiancé to foundation powerhouse. From gallery curator to global heiress. From abandoned to adored. And this time, she wasn't just someone's date. She was the headliner. The woman who had lost everything, and then built an empire from the rubble. Layla arrived alone, deliberately. Not on Elias's arm, not trailed by handlers or bodyguards. She wore a flowing white silk gown with a dramatic cape that rippled in the wind. Her baby bump proudly shaped the fabric. Her lips were bold red, her eyes lined in sharp black. She didn't look pregnant, she looked untouchable. A symbol, not just a story. The cameras went wild. Every flash was a victory. Every click, a confession from the world. We underestimated her. Inside, the ballroom pulsed with elegance. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above a crowd of global leaders, celebrities, philanthropists. A custom installation in the center featured a sculpture titled Grace Rising, a woman, head thrown back, hands lifting a fractured globe. It was inspired by Layla. She hadn't approved that part. But she didn't mind. Let them be inspired. For once, she wouldn't shrink to make others comfortable. Elias arrived 20 minutes later, sleek black tux, cool confidence, and eyes that never left Layla's silhouette. He didn't approach right away. He let her have her space, because that's what real love looked like. Not control, but respect. She finally turned to him with a soft smile. You came? I wouldn't miss it. Even if you're not the star tonight? Elias smirked. Trust me. I prefer it that way. Then he leaned in and whispered, You're going to be dangerous when this baby's born. Layla raised an eyebrow. Who says I'm not already? Later that evening, the host took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, please welcome the woman who redefined strength, elegance, and influence, Ms. Layla Alcott Monroe. Layla stepped up to the podium as the crowd erupted in applause. The lights dimmed, spotlight on her. She took a breath and began. 4 months ago, I stood in a ballroom not unlike this one, humiliated, heartbroken, and pregnant. My name was trending, not for what I'd built, but for who had broken me. The room went still. I was told I wouldn't be loved, that I wouldn't be chosen, that my value had an expiration date. She smiled, letting her voice soften. But here I stand, loved, powerful, and deeply pregnant. Laughter rippled through the audience, not because I proved them wrong, but because I stopped believing they were right. She looked out at the crowd, at the women nodding, the men blinking in awe, the press scribbling furiously. You don't have to burn in silence to be strong. You don't have to smile through betrayal to be brave. And you don't have to wait for permission to reclaim your name. She paused. Speaking of names, as of today, I am legally reclaiming mine. The name that was hidden from me. The name my grandfather left behind. She turned toward the screen behind her. The logo changed. The Alcott Initiative. A new brand. A new foundation. A new legacy. Gasps filled the room. I'm building an empire, Layla continued. One that funds women-led startups. One that protects survivors. One that reminds every girl watching this, your pain isn't the end of your story. She closed with a single line. And if you ever doubt your power, remember mine. The applause didn't stop for 5 minutes. After the speech, she stood at the back of the room, sipping sparkling water and watching the crowd circle around the sculpture. A voice spoke beside her, soft, deep. You didn't just speak, Elias said. You roared. Layla looked at him. I didn't plan the name reveal. Not really. It just felt right. It was. I need to do this, Elias, she said, voice lower. Not just for the world, for Grace, for me. I know. I'm not saying no to you. I know that too. She turned to him. You said you'd wait. He nodded. What if I don't want you to? He blinked. Layla continued. What if I want you beside me, not as a headline, not as a power play, but as a partner? Are you saying? I'm saying yes, she said, eyes bright, but on my terms. No white dress, no flash, no vows, just us. Elias reached for her hand, and in front of no cameras, no crowds, no chaos, he kissed her. Not as a billionaire, not as a savior, but as the man who saw her rise and never flinched. The next morning, Layla woke early. She padded into the nursery, not fully decorated yet, but softly lit, peaceful. She sat in the rocking chair and pressed a hand to her belly. Grace, she whispered, you are not born from pain. You are born from purpose. She thought of everything she had endured, the heartbreak, the headlines, the hospital. Then she thought of everything she had become. And she smiled, because she finally knew who she was. Not a victim, not a trophy, not a scandal, but a storm. And storms don't apologize for shaking the world. It was never meant to be a showdown. Layla Monroe hadn't planned to confront Tyler Grant in front of cameras, investors, and an international audience. She hadn't wanted another public moment soaked in shame and history. But sometimes life doesn't wait for your permission. Sometimes justice kicks down the door. The Global Impact Forum had been scheduled for months. A high-profile event gathering the world's top innovators, CEOs, philanthropists. It was where deals were made, partnerships formed, empires born. Layla had been invited as a keynote speaker, representing the Alcott Initiative and its billion-dollar fund for women-led ventures. Tyler was scheduled to appear on a panel about ethical leadership. The irony nearly made her laugh. Elias advised her to decline. You don't owe anyone a public reckoning, he said. I'm not going for revenge, Layla replied. I'm going because I belong in that room. And she did. Not as a footnote, as the headline. The forum's main hall gleamed with steel architecture, digital art displays, and live feeds beaming across global networks. Layla stepped onto the floor in a fitted black pantsuit, hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, her baby bump no longer something she tried to minimize. It was part of her armor. The moment she walked in, the energy shifted. People whispered. Press clicked. Panelists paused. And then she saw him. Tyler Grant. Standing near the refreshment bar, a ghost of the man he once was, paler, thinner, no longer surrounded by eager fans or camera crews. His newest startup had tanked after the lawsuit. Several investors filed complaints. Whispers of federal charges swirled, and he was hanging on to relevance by threads. He spotted her too. Their eyes locked. No words, just recognition. He looked away first. Her panel began at noon. The topic? Rebuilding after ruin. Perfect. Layla walked onto the stage, flanked by other powerhouse women, CEOs, activists, global advocates. She took her seat calmly. When her turn came, she didn't hold back. There's a moment, she said, when you realize no one is coming to save you, and that's the exact moment you begin to save yourself. Applause. People see the headlines, the viral clips, the donations, the lawsuits, But what they don't see is the night I couldn't breathe because the weight of public shame felt too heavy. Or the day my doctor told me I might lose my child if I didn't stop proving my worth to people who never deserved me. She paused. They don't see the silence I survived long before the noise. Someone in the front row wiped tears. Layla continued. But I rose. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but I rose. And now? I build. I build spaces for women to lead without fear, without shame, without permission. The crowd rose to their feet, standing ovation. Later, during the mixer, Layla stood by the terrace, sipping a non-alcoholic cocktail, feeling the crisp air and the sting of justice on her skin. Tyler approached. Of course he did. He wore a fake smile and a forced charm. You look presidential. Layla didn't respond. I just wanted to say, he continued, you really ran with it, turned that whole thing into your brand. She blinked slowly. That whole thing? You mean the public betrayal, the fake power of attorney, the stolen inheritance? Tyler's jaw tightened. You know, he muttered, some people would have handled it privately, quietly. She stepped closer. You chose to humiliate me in front of the world, so I rose in front of the world. Her voice was calm, controlled, lethal. You taught me something, Tyler. That silence is a weapon, and I refuse to ever be unarmed again. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off. You don't get a comeback story this time, she said. You get to disappear. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking like punctuation on the end of his chapter. Back at the hotel, Layla sat on the balcony with Elias beside her, city lights sparkling below them like stars that had fallen to earth. You did it, he said. No, she whispered. I'm still doing it. He looked at her. So what now? She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a printed proposal, Storm Alcott Legacy Foundation, a merger that would tie their names, resources, and vision into one global initiative. Elias read it in silence, then he smiled. This is your proposal? No rings, no altar, just purpose, and a lifetime of building. He looked up. Then my answer is yes. The next morning, they released the announcement together. Not just a romantic engagement, a strategic union, a combined empire that would shake industries, rewrite legacy rules, and reimagine power structures. Layla wasn't marrying into power. She was bringing hers to the table. And the world took notice. Headlines flooded. Layla Monroe and Elias Storm, the new power couple. From betrayal to billion-dollar alliance, Layla writes her own ending. But for Layla, it wasn't an ending. It was only the beginning. Her daughter Grace would be born into a world her mother had helped reshape, where strength didn't mean silence, and love didn't require shrinking. Where being a woman, a mother, a leader, didn't mean choosing one over the others. On the last night of the forum, as fireworks lit up the skyline, Elias wrapped a coat over Layla's shoulders and whispered, You know the world's watching again. She smiled, resting a hand on her belly. Good, she said. Let them see everything they said I'd never be. The hospital room was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of dawn creeping through the blinds. Machines beeped rhythmically, steady, calming. In the corner sat Elias, half asleep in the visitor's chair, his jacket draped over the back, his shirt wrinkled, tie loosened. And in the hospital bed, Layla Monroe, exhausted, changed, and holding her daughter, Grace Storm Alcott, a full head of dark curls, tiny fists that curled tightly against her mother's chest. She had come into the world crying strong, lungs full of life. Now, she slept silently, a miracle wrapped in a pink blanket. Layla couldn't stop looking at her, not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because Grace was proof. Proof that life didn't end when everything else did. That sometimes destruction cleared space for creation. She thought back to the gala, to being called out, shamed, whispered about, to Tyler's betrayal, to the panic attacks, to the courtroom, to the rage. And then she looked at her daughter and smiled. Because this was the real victory. Not the headlines, not the applause, not the fortune, but this tiny life that no one could take from her. When Elias woke, his first instinct was to check Layla's face. He'd memorized every expression she made since the hospital called him in. She looked different now, softer, still, but stronger than ever. She's perfect, he whispered. She's everything, Layla replied. They sat in silence for a while, watching her sleep. And then Layla said, Do you think she'll understand? Understand what? What it cost to protect her, to fight back, to start over. Elias took her hand. She won't need to understand. She'll see it. In every choice you make, every wall you knock down, every time you said, no more. Layla nodded slowly. Then I need to start telling the whole story. All of it. 6 weeks later, Layla Monroe launched the Grace Speaks initiative, a global platform designed to give voice to women whose stories had been silenced. Survivors of abuse, discrimination, betrayal, young mothers, former inmates, refugees, anyone who'd ever been told, you're too damaged to be believed. Layla didn't just fund it, she led it, with her own story. In a video that would break records, she sat in front of a plain white background and spoke straight to the camera. No makeup, no script, just truth. I was told no one would love a pregnant woman, she began, but love doesn't shrink in the face of fear, it expands. She talked about the betrayal, the collapse, the pregnancy, the lawsuit, the inheritance, the rise. She didn't hide the scars, she showed them, and then she said what would later become the motto of her movement. I am not powerful despite being a woman. I am powerful because I am one. The video hit 50 million views in 48 hours. Within a week, women from over 40 countries had submitted their own videos, their own confessions, their own calls to action. A movement had begun, not centered on pain, but on reclamation. Meanwhile, Tyler Grant's spiral completed itself. The lawsuit ended in criminal charges. The forged documents, leaked emails, and insider testimonies sealed his fate. He lost everything. His company, his endorsements, even his passport after the court ruled him a flight risk. When reporters asked Layla for a comment, she said only, I wish him accountability. That's the kindest thing I can offer. She never mentioned him again. 1 year later, Layla stood backstage at a United Nations summit, Grace bouncing on her hip, tiny headphones, covering her ears as she smiled wide at the chaos around her. Layla was about to address the world. Not as a headline, but as a policymaker. Her initiative had become a model for global women's advocacy. Countries were partnering, leaders were listening, change was happening, and it had all started with one woman refusing to be erased. Elias appeared beside her, adjusting his tie. You ready? She looked at her daughter, then at the stage, then at herself. I was born ready, she said, and walked out. The audience rose as she stepped up to the podium. They weren't applauding her celebrity. They were applauding her courage. Layla spoke without notes. I am not here to inspire pity or praise. I'm here to rewrite the rules, to say that a woman's worth is not measured by how quietly she endures, but by how fiercely she rises. Motherhood is not a weakness, emotion is not a flaw, and love, real love, does not ask you to shrink. The hall exploded in applause, and as she walked off stage, Layla knew this was only chapter 1. That night, back at their townhouse, Elias read Grace her favorite book while Layla rocked gently beside them. The house was quiet, warm, safe, and filled with a kind of peace she once thought she'd never feel again. Elias turned to Layla. You did it, she smiled. No, we did. He kissed her forehead. Still want to skip the wedding? She laughed. No big dress, but maybe something intimate. Intimate I can do. And in that moment, with their daughter curled between them, no cameras, no chaos, no headlines. They had everything. Not because it was perfect, but because it was theirs. And if you ever passed her on the street, maybe years later pushing a stroller or walking into a boardroom, you might not know the full story. You might not know she was the woman whose fiancé betrayed her on national TV. You might not know she was the woman who went from abandoned to adored. You might not know she had been told she wasn't worthy of love. But if you looked closely, if you watched the way she walked, heard the way she spoke, felt the way people reacted when she entered a room, you'd know one thing for sure. She was never just a pregnant woman. She was a revolution. And her name? Layla Alcott Monroe. Remember it. Because legends aren't born. They rise. So the story is ended, our wonderful friends. Are you still here with us? If you are, it means something in this journey touched your heart. Maybe you've been hurt. Maybe you've been told you're not enough. But here's the truth. Your pain does not define your worth. You have the power to rewrite your story, just like Layla did. As the saying goes, the wound is the place where the light enters you. Let that light in. Let it rebuild you. You're not broken. You're becoming. And if this story moved you even just a little, then please, leave us a comment Share it with someone who needs this, and don't forget to subscribe. You never know who's waiting to hear a story like this. You are not alone, and you never were. Let's keep rising, together.